Parents and grandparents are met with so many mental health challenges when it comes to raising children. And often when our children go through these challenges, like what we are discussing today, it also impacts the mental and emotional health of parents too. Art and Jessica Diaz are going to join us today to share their story, and they're very familiar with these challenges, including parenting through grief. So Art and Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today. We know that this conversation is going to be heavy and it's emotional, but it's so needed. And before we get into that part of it, I want you to share about yourselves, family, whatever you would want people to know about you guys.
Okay. Well, good morning to all. Thank you for having us. And we are the Diaz family. This is San Antonio is kind of considered our second home. We met and kind of started our family in Florida.
Okay.
But we love it here in San Antonio, and we've been here for almost 20 years. And we have 3 sons, Anthony, and Brandon, and Joshua.
What's something fun you guys like to do on the weekends?
We love going to the movies together. That's always been my favorite thing to do. Is just because we're all together,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's my favorite part of that. So we've always done that since the boys were little. Movies, fishing. The boys love fishing. The beach when we lived in Florida. That was one of our pastimes. And I remember when we first moved here, Brandon's like, so when are we going to the beach?
We're like, Brandon, it's not like it's 2 hours away, really? But he was 3 years old?
He was 3 years old.
Yeah.
And so we had to take him to the beach. So, but like, it's too far. And after a while, I was like, it's too far. So we stopped going. Yeah. Kind of like, the Florida beaches. Yeah. They're one of a kind, I guess.
Yeah.
They're really nice.
Yeah. And Art, you love to grill.
I do
right?
love to grill. I do love to grill.
We're ready.
After my own heart.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Steak and lobster? What do you?
Both ends.
Yeah. Okay.
Both of them.
You guys are coming. All right.
That's what he actually did for Valentine's Day. Because restaurants are busy. So he's like, what about if I just go buy some lobster tails, some steaks, and these are going to be some good steaks, babe. They're not going to be like the ones you get at Roadhouse. So that's what we did, lobster tails. And I'm like, I can't have no more lobster. Steaks and sent me some roses to work. And so that was a sweet touch.
Fun.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We have 3 boys. Art mentioned Anthony's 23, Brendan 22, and Joshua is 15. Brandon and Joshua love music. They play guitar. They were both in orchestra. Anthony was more into skateboarding. So he's not going to college. He has a girlfriend. They've been together for 6 years now. She's a nurse. He's going to school to become a dental hygienist.
Okay.
So they're doing good. Growing up, yes.
Very proud of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that state of our lives as being grandparents. He's not, but I am.
I am. Be great
I'm ready.
That's awesome. So fun. That's neat. What kind of movies? Any specific?
Superhero movies.
Okay.
Yeah, Marvels,
Okay.
all that stuff.
Okay. Roman's a fan, right?
I am a fan.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if I can mention these on camera.
Right.
But we'll talk about it afterwards.
We've probably seen it. Oh, yeah. We up to the last one. I don't know what it is, but we can't. But yeah.
Yeah, it's always been superhero movies.
Yeah.
I grew up with boys, so now having 3 boys, so I'm okay with watching that.
Right on.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Another thing we like to do is during football, just watching the Cowboys.
Okay. The
That's a tough
Cowboys.
life as a Cowboys fan, I know. God bless y'all.
So you are a Cowboy fan?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes,
I am
ma'am.
too. So
Go Cowboys.
good season, bad season. It's just you
You're
love
faithful.
them.
Yeah.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Any college football fans?
Florida State.
Okay.
She likes Florida
Yes.
State.
Uh-huh.
I'm a Miami Hurricanes fan. So.
Okay.
But from back in the day, not recent. Yeah.
I guess here in Texas will be what?
Longhorns. Yeah,
Longhorns.
Longhorns.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
part of our Longhorns.
Hook 'em home.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Awesome.
And of course the Spurs.
Yes.
Yes.
Aw.
Okay, so you guys are really becoming Texans.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, I've had the blessing of helping be a part of your boys' journey, and it's been wonderful to watch them grow. Share with us a little bit about Brandon's story. He was an amazing, wonderful son and an amazing soul. Share that with us.
So Brandon is my middle son. He was born 2 days before my birthday. He was the littlest of the three, but became the biggest of all three. He was just a big kid. He was a gentleman, especially towards me. He was a very gentle soul. I think most people that describe him is just that's how they describe him, a gentle boy.
Can I share an example of when I saw that? When the first, I think it was similar to student weekend, or maybe it was summer camp. I don't remember which one it was, but you guys brought him and Anthony to go, and I think it was their first time. And Brandon, I remember saying to you, Jessica, they will be forced to be friends with everybody because they are going to have a small group. And you're like, okay. And Brandon just looked at you and was like, okay, if my mom said, if my mom is okay with it, then yes, I am. I'm good with it. Yes. But he was just he had a very gentle spirit about him.
He did. Even as a baby, he was one. He didn't hardly have much to say, but I think he just expressed himself with, being kind to others and protective of his little brother and me, most especially. He loved helping and being there for the kids that were smaller than him, or that if he noticed they were being bullied at school, he was the one that would always, even though he didn't fight, but I think his size intimidated people. Yeah. So he just a gentle, humble kid, loved music. He just, he loved his mama and his little brother.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about what all took place. It's been about 7 years, but can you share with us where you were at the time and what all might have happened on that particular day?
I remember it was a Tuesday morning. It was October, and it was raining and it was cold. It was just a gloomy day. And Anthony and Brandon, they rode the bus to school. And this day, I called Brandon and Anthony to let them know not to leave him outside, Duke, our dog, because he was going to get muddy. Anthony didn't answer, so I called Brandon. He answered, and I said, just make sure that you don't leave Duke outside. And he's like, okay, Mom. I said, I'll see you later. Have a good day at school, and I love you. He said, I love you too, Mom. This was around, 8 in the morning. I was just getting into work. I remember just where I was. And maybe about 2-3 hours later, I get a phone call, and my coworker, front desk, she came around looking for me. I'm a dental assistant, so I was with a patient at that time, and she just had a look on her face. She said, Art's on the phone, and I was kind of annoyed because. So our routine was we would always call each other on the way to work just to say have a good day. And that day I didn't because I called the boys instead. So I'm like, I know I didn't call you, you know, but
So you thought I was calling you to like, hey, what happened? You left me hanging here.
but so I got to the phone and he was crying. He just said, "Babe, you gotta get home." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "You just gotta get home." And
You were like, no, tell me why I'm going home. I'm like, well, okay. Well, Brandon got hurt. I told him. What do you mean hurt? I said, I couldn't say it, but I said, well, he got shot. I'm like, what do you mean he got shot? And then that's when she just hung up and she left. And I didn't see her until I got home. And for me, I was delivering fuel in South Texas towards the Tilden area. And I was an hour and a half away from home when I got the phone call. And you can imagine the drive home.
Yeah.
You just can't get there fast enough.
Right.
So what do? You just try to get there as quick as you can. And first person I saw was my dad. And he just gave me that look also, like no. And they didn't allow us to go into the home to see him. So so someone took us to one of our neighbor's house. And that's where everybody was gathering there. And that's where I met my wife. And I had told her that he didn't make it. Because she didn't believe it. She couldn't believe it until she needed to hear it from me. So that was it.
Wow.
I it's the same thing. I just remember my coworker drove me home because she can't drive. I still didn't know, but I knew. And so our street was blocked off, so she kind of had to pull over, and I just ran to our home and saw my father-in-law, and he didn't have to say anything. He just, his face, and just everything's just a blur from there. I just remember collapsing, and they put me in the ambulance and trying to calm me down, and eventually I ended up at my neighbor's house and waited for him to arrive. And he made it there safe, because he was an hour away driving a truck with fuel. And we're there, and the firefighters, everybody, I just remember the kindness from these strangers. I vaguely remember as I was laying there in the ambulance, firefighter, I looked at him and I asked him to take me to my son, and he was crying. And of course they didn't allow that, so we just gathered in our neighbor's house, and we were, I don't know, it seemed like for hours, and then family started arriving, and I remember seeing you both, and Samuel, and I just remember thinking everything's gonna be okay.
Wow.
Just seeing you guys there, just everything's gonna be okay. And just though, because there was 3 from Oak Hills here, and there was 3 from Alamo Ranch, and somehow everybody came up with a plan. Who's gonna go get Joshua? Who's gonna go get Anthony from school? And then they're there, and helping, break the news to them, and I just, from that moment on, we've never been alone. Just church has been a great support for us.
There's nothing like the power of the body of Christ, specifically in crisis like this. There's no grief like the grief of losing a child. How did you all, in navigating this, learn how to surrender your pain to God and yet allow yourselves to grieve?
One of the things that a friend of mine, she had lost a child, and she said, just focus on one truth for today. Just if it's just one word, God hold me, just one truth, for the day.
Yeah.
And that helped a lot, to because there's nothing on this earth, nothing can heal that grief. But I know God's promises are true, and they do, because they did. It helped me get through the day. I remember when I went back to work, just saying, show me where to step next. Where do I go? Where do I step next, God? I think just really being in the moment and just remembering this truth.
Yeah.
That helped me.
That's good. Art, what about you?
For me, delivering that we stayed at my parents for about a month after this happened, because we couldn't return to our home. So we stayed there, and we took like a month off because we couldn't go back to work right away. And actually, my employer said, no, just take your time. What you do is dangerous already, and we need you to come back, but take your time. So about a month, and I went back, and the whole time we were there, my parents, the church just came every day, bringing us food, bringing us company, support, just being there, praying with us, just holding our hands all day long, just getting us out of bed. Hey,
that was such a comfort. I look forward to seeing you guys every day.
Yeah, a new sunrise, because we knew that we were going to be surrounded by friends and family again. And that's so important to have when you're going through something like this, because you can't do it alone.
I think it's more, I know it's more devastating when you don't have that hope. Because we met several families after Brandon. And there was one in particular that, her daughter committed suicide, and they were not believers. And there's nothing that I could say to her, that from, that comforted me, with God's truth. There was nothing I can say to her that would comfort her, because she didn't know that. And she didn't want to accept it either. And it's just more devastating when you don't have that. It just, so for sure, just God's word, His truth, just because it's one of those things where nothing can take that away, or just.
When within the hours after everything happened, and eventually your things aren't a blur anymore, there's and I don't know, I don't know if at what point in the hours after were you okay, either okay, God, I'm gonna trust in you, or maybe it just was, not even hours after, it was weeks after. Just, it's almost like as you came to, what, I guess my question would be, what did that look like for both of you? Just like those next steps when you needed somebody to come and get you out of bed. Because and we'll talk about this in a little bit about what God has sustained you through, but the process of getting to where you are today, starts hours after, or immediately, but once you realize and you're like, this is not a dream, what did that look like?
So For me, I remember one of the most difficult parts was going to a funeral home.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to pick, a package.
Right.
With flowers, arrangements, the music. And I was not prepared for that at all. Going from funeral home to funeral home. But even in that, God showed up. Because we had a family that said, don't worry about the financial part. Because that's another, you have to pay for all this, right? You have to pay thousands of dollars.
And you're having to think about that while you're actually thinking about the actual challenge, that it doesn't seem fair sometimes.
Yeah.
So we had a family that wrote a check. Here, it just, so that was one less thing we had to worry about, because when we went to the first funeral home and they said how much it was going to be, we're like, we don't have that money. Yeah. What are we going to do? And
we had just, buried her brother 6 months before that. And we were in Florida for a month. So I wasn't working. She wasn't working. Our funds stopped coming in. So we depleted all our savings. And we came back 6 months later. We're trying to barely get on our feet. And then our son. And boom, back down again. So we had a family, one very good people that they lived down the street from us. And our kids grew up with their kids. And
they love Brandon like one of their own.
right.
But again, just the support, in those moments leading up to that, just the funeral of your son, your child.
Because we should have been preparing his graduation, picking out pictures, picking out this, but we're preparing for his funeral.
What is he gonna wear?
Yeah.
So it's not good.
No.
It's not good.
Art, before we started recording, you mentioned it wasn't just us. I can tell you're a guy that takes on some responsibility for other people. So you're in the midst of grieving, but you're still also a parent to 2 other boys. How did you find the wherewithal to continue parenting? And how did you see God show up in the midst of that?
Well, at first, I would say for me, those first 30 days, since we had so many family and friends for us, my sons had his cousins that came in from Florida, family from the Valley. So everyone had someone.
That's good.
So at that moment, I didn't have to worry too much about it.
Yeah.
But after, when we came home, when it was just us 4 now, without Brandon.
I remember in that season, we did a special service so that all of our youth could come together with their parents and with people that could help provide some guidance, just some comfort. And I remember your whole family came that day.
Right.
How did that begin to provide healing for you as a family, as your community of faith surrounded you on that particular Sunday morning? I remember it being an amazing day of worship, still in the middle of all of our pain. But when your family came in, there was something about what they were experiencing Can you share a little bit about what that was for you as a family?
So we actually had a couple of family members that they came to us afterwards and said, because of Brandon, I believe now. My faith has been made stronger, and that was very special to me. Just that God was redeeming it from that moment, and good was coming out, and that made it more, I guess, worth, can't think of the word, to continue on, because there was hope.
Yes.
There was hope there, and so just seeing our family come together and experiencing that, our faith, and seeing what the true body of Christ looked like in action, that was very meaningful and special. Because till this day, one cousin in particular stands out in my mind that she struggled for the longest time, and she said, my little cousin, strengthened my faith. And to this day, she is still, she sends me scriptures, just so it's still continuing on, just that hope, that they're doing it, they're going, so it must be real, it's true. I'm seeing it, because you can speak it, but in those moments, in those dark moments when all hope should be lost, but there is hope.
Yeah.
It's a different hope.
Yeah. Having to continue to parent, like what Ramin was asking, even through the hard time, but then, we know, and I'm sure you guys know too, of families that they are torn apart by something like this, which, of course, it's not a surprise that would happen, because this is devastating. What is, for those who are listening that may be married and are walking through a hard challenge, maybe not something this specific, but that is devastating to their family, what encouragement would you give them? You guys are still married, we still see you together all the time. Maybe it's the same answer of that hope. I'm sure it is the same answer, but talk a little bit about how God worked in your marriage through this just major challenge.
I think for sure one of the again, like, this is another believer, another person in our life at that moment, that is, I guess, feeding us, words. From them right away, allow her to grieve as a mother, allow him to grieve, give each other that space to grieve, but then come back together. That was very important for us, because there was never a moment where he made me feel like I was grieving wrong. There's no right or wrong, and I hope I've never made him feel like you're doing it wrong, just because we're both hurting. His might be in a different way as a father, because I know he always would tell me, like, I feel like I failed because as the husband, as the father, I'm supposed to protect you guys, and I couldn't protect Brandon. But we know that that's not, true, because he still do that for us. He can still do that for us, and he's still doing that for us. It just and then just sharing our emotions. To this day, we have a lot of conversations, and we'll just babe, I was feeling this way. What do you think? And he'll just same thing.
Yeah. And I guess for the fathers, that are struggling with certain things, with their families and sons or daughters, just listen to them, talk to them. You know, when you feel something, just call in, get up and go check. And just, hey, how are you guys? We love you. You want to go out, let's get out of here. Let's go do something. Just get them out of that routine.
Yeah.
And just keep that, just tell them you love them every day. Yeah, just tell them you love them every day.
And I think I just also, like for me, I had to understand that our daily lives is not going to look the same anymore. Like I mentioned earlier, from cooking, from doing laundry, it's not the same anymore. And just me understanding, our home may not look the same as it did before. Being okay with that. Yeah. Just being kind to yourself, it doesn't have to be perfect again, one of the things that I remember is when we were going to a grieving center, is they show the kids, they have them paint a heart, and then they paint cracks in the heart. And that's your brokenness, your grief, your sorrow. But then they have them paint flowers in those cracks, and it's just that you're going to continue to, yes, they're still alive, yes. That's been one of the things for sure that our boys, we love Brandon. We still talk about Brandon. He's always going to be part of us. He's always going to be in our memories. But we continue on with him. Joshua, when we told him what happened, because he was the first one to arrive that day to the home where we were, and he was crying, and I was hugging him, and he wiped his tears, and he's like, I'm gonna live for my brother now. He was 8 years old, and yes, you live for your brother, but also live for yourself, and do what you love too. And just being kind to yourself. And I've had to learn that as a mother, because as a mother, you want to control your kids, like you want to control the home. You want to, have a nice place for them to come home. And just allowing me, if I didn't feel like washing the dishes that day, if I don't feel like cooking that day, because I'm sad, I'm having a hard day, it's okay. We can do it a different way. We'll still have dinner. It just accepting that, life is not going to look the same, but it can still be beautiful. You can still find joy in those moments and make new memories. We took a trip to Big Bend last springtime. And that was beautiful, and we carry Brandon with us, and he's part of us, everywhere we go, and
yeah, he goes on vacations with us.
So it just acknowledging the life is not going to be the same, but it can still be beautiful.
I love that. I love that image of the flowers growing through the cracks. I can't help but think of in Scripture, the Apostle Paul says, the same comfort which you've been comforted, you'll comfort others. How have y'all had the opportunity to comfort other families who are maybe dealing with grief or mourning?
For sure, as a mother, sharing our hearts. Yeah. Sharing our hearts. Again, just accepting that you don't have to have a perfect home life. You allow yourself the space, the grace to grieve. And if you're having a good day and you're happy, you're smiling, to also accept that. It's you're not doing it wrong just because you're smiling or laughing. Just allowing your emotions to be poured out, just I don't know if this is in the scripture, but I just keep, like the washing of the Spirit, when you're crying, just if you feel good afterwards. As a mother, that's what I would say, just be kind to yourself. It's okay if you're having a good day. It's okay if you're having a bad day. Parenting, we're still trying to figure out how to parent our boys now, because their hearts are they're also bleeding.
Yeah, that's true, because, and we had this conversation this morning or last night, that just, our kids are grieving too, right? And they're, they're just growing, and so many things, all day long, just one subject after another at school, one teacher after another at school. So for us to get up and go to work and do the same thing over and over and over, versus them getting up and going to school, they don't do the same thing over and over. They're learning something that they didn't learn, something new today that they didn't learn yesterday. So for them, all that, and then they still compete and they still do extracurricular things. That's something to be proud of. And I told her, like, they're trying, despite of all this grief and sorrow. So, let's support them, support your children, whatever they want to do, just support them. Don't say, hey, I want you to do this. Why aren't you doing that? I want you to play this, but not that. Of course, we all want it our way, right? But they still have their life to live, and they have choices they want to make. So it's not always just about us. There's other people involved. So just, allow them to make choices for themselves and mistakes, and learn from those mistakes. But also guide your children, right? Try to guide them in the godly way, and the way, we should, but also give them the space to be teenagers, and just listen to them, and try to be there as much as you can for them. But I'm glad this came up, because we just talked about that this morning, and like as she said, we're just every day just learning more and how to raise our children with this grief, with the loss of their brother, and that's more challenging because it's hard enough already, to raise kids
to them, but at the same time you want to be like firm. So we still navigate that, Anthony's 23 now, and like, how do we, when he's having a bad day, letting him know, hey, you're hurting, we're hurting too. Every emotion that you may be feeling, we're also feeling it. So let's come together. We have Maddie family gatherings, and where we just talk about our emotions. How is your day? Just, do you want to share anything that made you angry or sad, or just communicating, and just being one. Just it's a different. It's life now. In grief.
If there's somebody listening that they can't even possibly comprehend being on the other side of their challenge, not that there's a place where anybody's ever arrived and like there's no challenges anymore, but they can't even see themselves getting to the point of trusting God like you guys are, and they can't see any light. What would you tell those parents or grandparents, anybody who's having an influence on a child in any way? What would you tell them that they just don't feel that hope that you guys have had?
I say for sure find someone that you can like be comfortable. They give you your space to share your emotions, but in return, that person can feed you truth. You know, because we can find someone that we can share our emotions, and then that person may not, you know, speak words of life over you, you know. So even if you don't want to, I don't want to hear it, just you know, it's like when you go to a doctor, you're sick. You know you're going to go get this medication. Same thing, find this person that you can trust without judgment, and that you can share your emotions, and then that person will feed you truth, and just kind of you know, hey, I know you're feeling this way, but because that was done to me and it helped, you know, just that following day after Brandon took his life, one of my friends said, hey, Jess, if God was to come and tell you right now why Brandon took his life, will it matter? And I don't know, it could have been just the way she said it, but I'm like, no, it's not going to matter, because it's not going to change. So just having a person, for sure, that will give you your space and speak truth into you. We all need that. That was one of the things for sure that helped me to see past the darkness, the hopelessness.
That's good. Art, what would you add to that?
I mean, just try to get some professional help. You know, there's always good counselors. There's church counselors. You know, there's ones. You know, so get in touch with someone that can help you. If you can't figure it out, or turn to someone immediately that can help you, definitely don't give up. Keep looking, because there's always someone out there to help. For me, I guess it was my friend down the street. You know, you always, you know, how you doing, Art? You know, holidays, Art, we're thinking about you. You know, do y'all want to come over? You know, those first few years, you know, that was very important to me, because I knew that I wasn't going through this alone. That, you know, that our son touched so many lives, you know, and they were hurting just as much as we were. That, you know, just knowing that they were thinking of us, and just, you know, that gave me hope. That gave me hope.
I think especially like in your question you asked, if this adult is like responsible for, let's say, a grandchildren or a child, what would be your goal to help this child, right? So hopefully your goal is to help, you know, them come out of the dark thoughts. So and that's one way, you know, you gotta help yourself. That's the first step. You gotta help yourself so you can, you know, help the child that you're responsible for. Because if, you know, then what are you going to be feeding that child? You know, just you want to feed them hope, you know, and just let them see that, yes, it's hard. Yes, we're going to be sad. Yes, we're going to cry. That's okay. It's part of this. That's part of the grief. You love your brother. You love your, you know, whoever it is. It's natural. You know, I would be worried if you were not feeling those things. But, you know, there's going to be the next moment. Because you're living moment by moment. How do I feel right now? You know, now, are you okay? You know, Anthony, are you okay? Joshua, are you okay? So just, you know, helping yourself, you know, so you can help that child.
That's important.
You know, Psalms talks to us about how the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. And as you've shared your story, we've seen the brokenness that you have felt. And yet, some of the things that you've shared just reveals to me how you're trying to find the joy in the midst of the pain. And so, and I've seen that. I've seen that in the way that you serve our children, in the way that you serve together in terms of our body, our church body. And so here we are several years on the other side of something that was so painful. How would you say the family is doing today collectively that includes your parents? Because I know how painful that was for them too.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned, I have 3 brothers. One of them, so committed suicide. My brother, he's a recovering alcoholic now, so he's been clean for 3 years. My little brother, he is so in love with God now, takes his family to church. So even when I didn't feel that I was, being hopeful, they saw that in us again, just because it's one thing to say it and then another thing to act it out or live it out. And they always say, it's because of you, it's because of you and, what God has done in your life. And so my brothers are doing good. They go to church. My mom, she's doing well too. We become very in tune now with each other because we're all in this together, and it's just there's only one way now for us is just to keep going. Keep going and be better for each other, be better for our loved ones, and then remembering that our kids, our little ones, my little nieces, my nephews, my sons, they're watching us how we do this.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what matters, because we want them, when they become adults to say, my uncle, my aunt, they went through this and they did it this way. So my hopes is that they remember, and again, it was because of God. It was nothing that, no special formula. It just, it's because of God.
Yeah. And I would say that's what you've modeled, complete dependency on the Lord to help get you through.
I know for me, it's closed the gaps because before all this, I would struggle, with church and being here, and not so much with drugs and alcohol and all that stuff, but just my faith. Right, my faith wasn't all there. But after my son's passing, it just drew me nearer to Him. Like it just closed all the gaps. Now I have no gaps between me and God. It's like my son was the great sacrifice or something for me. It's like, I don't know, like when God put Jesus and Jesus was our sacrifice, like our son sacrificed his life for me to get nearer to God. And it's weird how that sounds, but.
I remember like a few days because we were staying with his parents. And are you guys familiar with John Piper?
Yeah.
So I would play that all the time before that, and he would be like, but those days, like he remembered that, and he would play it so loud. And my mother-in-law's the TV, he would put it on YouTube, and he would just listen to that over and over and over again. I would get in his car, and that was playing. Yes. It was like just again like feeding him that hope, the life again, and so that's one of the things that stand out to me. And being in his mom's living room and the TV's blasting John Piper,
His sermons and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Man, I love that guy.
Yeah. He has some sermons that are like, no matter, it's the stuff that he says, it walks you through hard stuff. Like, how do you still glorify God when it's when
in the middle of it?
Yeah. Yeah. Like that's our whole purpose is to glorify God, even in the midst of like the challenge that you guys walked through.
Yeah. I love that y'all knew where your help comes from.
Yeah.
It comes from the Lord, right?
That's right. I didn't turn to the bottle. I didn't turn to the drugs. I turned to God.
Yeah.
That's a miracle.
So wonderful that you say that, because every morning when I would drive the boys to school, So where we live, like there's kind of like a little hill and their school's there. And behind their school, you can see the hills, when the lotus and stuff. And so every morning I would say, you know, I look up to the hills.
Right. Where does my help come from?
And then I'd be like, yes, Mom. But that was every morning, like, look, boys,
Every
the
morning.
hills, you know, and then they were like, yes, Mom, where does my help come from?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Go back to their phones.
Well, thanks to you both for
Yes.
sharing such a hard and heavy story. I mean, it's incredible. It really, like what we talked about before we started filming, it's a miracle. What God has walked you guys through, because not all families get to, they're maybe not at this part of their story yet, and they can't see how to even get there. And you guys are a perfect example of how, yes, you were surrounded by family and church family, but it is 100% God who redeemed and is redeeming, continuing to redeem your story and Brandon's story and Josh and Anthony. I mean, your whole family.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
So
thank
much.
you.
You guys have are there any other questions that come up or anything else that you guys would want to say to families?
I just want to say, you know, to the parents that, you know, if you're just days into it, you know, months, that there's hope. You know, there's hope in your child. You're always going to love your child no matter what. But, you know, just knowing that God loved my son first and he formed him, he knew him, you know, that's comforting to me. You know, that God was present in every single moment. And I don't doubt that he was even there with Brendan at that moment.
To receive him.
And I one of the pastors said, you know, when your son closed his eyes here, he opened them, you know, in the kingdom of God. And Brendan's favorite scripture was Romans 6:23, and he told me that like it was maybe a week or two before he took his life. So that scripture has a lot of is special to us, you know, and but yeah, just your love for your child is gonna remain no matter how much time goes by. You know, they're always going to be part of your life. You're always going to love them, and years may go by and, you know, they are no longer there to make memories with you, but it's okay because you still have your love for your child. That doesn't die when they stop.
And I think every time you think about him, you're creating new memories.
Right.
You know, because you're picturing him now at 22 and then 30 and then 40. And so I see Brandon now as an older person, and, you know, I'm creating new memories in my mind, even if he's not here. I think so. And I just want to say thank you to the Oak Hills family and Oak Hills Church and staff and everyone that was able to bring this together. I also want to send out my heart to the families that we did connect with. You know, after our son passed, you know, there was a few other families that lost some loved ones. You know, I wish y'all well. You guys are doing great, and, you know, give us a call or a text and reach out to us. We're still here, and we love you guys.
It's a good example of God's love for us. You know, when we love our children or somebody that's so special to us, it's just a glimpse of the amount of love that God has for us.
Yeah.
What he desires for us.
Absolutely.
So thanks you guys so much.
All right, Jessica, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks for your courage to share.
Thank you.
We love you.
We love you guys too.
Yeah.
And we are so grateful for Oak Hills.
Yeah.
You know,
Thank you so much for joining us today. If this was a helpful resource, we have more parent talks available for you to check out. And you can also find more resources at oakhillschurch.com/care.